Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Hello and welcome to another episode of Living the Dream with Curveball. I'm your host, Curveball, and today I am joined by financial advisor, author, and former news and television man, Mike Brodsky. Today, we're going to be talking about a little bit about his life, and he's written a couple of books, so we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about a big sports story that he broke one time that was picked up by ESPN, Bleacher Report, and TMZ. Mike, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Curtis. I appreciate it.
Why don't you start off by telling the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and anything else you might want them to know before we kick it off?
Sure, absolutely. As you mentioned, I am a financial advisor. I've spent also some time working in television. I started my career as a television news producer with the NBC affiliate in West Palm Beach. And recently I had the opportunity to sort of get back into sports reporting, and we'll get into that story a little bit later on. But I've also been involved in a lot of different not-for-profits as well. Maybe we'll touch on some of those endeavors. Also, I know you and I connected through Clubhouse, and maybe we'll chat a little bit about that. But I wear a lot of different hats. I guess that's probably the best way to summarize my background.
Well, let's first start talking about your passion, those nonprofit organizations. Just kind of tell us what you're involved in and a little bit about each one of them, because I know that you are extremely passionate about those endeavors.
Sure, absolutely. Currently, I'm the vice chairman of the board for the Mustard Seed of Central Florida, which is a furniture and clothing bank in Orlando, Florida. And that's been a great organization. We help folks who have been impacted either by personal tragedy or natural disaster, providing them with the furniture that they need to make their house a home, providing beds, and also even just clothing for those who need it. So that's been a great organization that we've been involved with for a while, and a great mission. I've also been the president of the Yale Alumni Association of Central Florida and the All Ivy Club of Central Florida, mainly because nobody else wants the job, but it's been a fun organization to be part of and to connect with a lot of other bright people in Central Florida. I'm also currently the president of the Jewish Chamber of Commerce, though we really haven't done a lot since COVID broke out, but hopefully when we eventually hit herd immunity in the near future, we'll get back to doing more events once again. I've also been part of the Florida Citrus Sports Team Selection Committee, also known as the Scouting Committee. Florida Citrus Sports basically runs the two bowl games in Orlando, the Citrus Bowl and the Cheez-It Bowl, which take place at Camping World Stadium in Orlando. So for any sports fans out there, check out FloridaCitrusSports.com.
So let's talk about the books that you have written. You've written a sports book, and you've written a self-help book, a personal transformation. So tell us about those.
Yeah, absolutely. The most recent book was Fourth Down and Damn, a lineman story, the autobiography of Leon Searcy, as told by Mike Brodsky. That book we launched in November. Now, for fans of your podcast, of course, they may have heard Leon talk about the book on Friday's release. So if you haven't heard that episode of Curtis's podcast, be sure to go back and download Friday's podcast. But Fourth Down and Damn is basically just the story of Leon, who played football for the Miami Hurricanes. He was a three-time national champion, also drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and later played with the Jacksonville Jaguars and is one of the top 25 players of all time for the Jags. But it's just a great story, and I had a wonderful opportunity to kind of help Leon sort of get his story out there, kind of get it over the goal line, so to speak. He had been working on the project for a long time, and I was asked to kind of help him finish up the book, put it together in a book format. So that was a great opportunity to kind of refine his story and sort of take some of his audio recordings and turn them into the book, and take his diary and make it more of a structured kind of a format. A great story, and we're currently working on the audiobook version as well as working on a possible movie or TV version of it as well. And the first book that I had written was actually put it out back in 2014. It's called Incremental Improvements, Change Your Life One Small Step at a Time. It was #1 on Amazon's personal transformation list. And that book really kind of grew out of my work as a financial advisor. I had a lot of folks that would come to me for advice about not just the money, but also about other aspects of their lives. And I found myself sort of taking notes and trying to put my message together about how I wanted to convey certain bits of information. And originally, when I first started doing that, I really never even intended for it to be a book. As a matter of fact, in my first job as a financial advisor, I worked with a company that really would not have allowed me to put the book out because we weren't allowed to have outside business interests. But over time, I just kind of was taking these notes on how to deliver different messages to folks about how to make changes in their lives. Over time, I just kept building up that essentially a computer file, a Word file with all of that information. And when our team moved from one firm over to our current firm, I found out that I could put the book out. I just had to jump through a few hoops in terms of getting the book approved by our compliance department, how to get industry approval from the regulators. But as long as I did all of those things, I could actually put a book out. And so I kind of took a look at what I had been creating on my computer and realized maybe there's a book here. And so I just kind of formatted it as a book and went through the process of getting it together. And in talking with different literary agents, I kind of realized that on the one hand, since I really didn't have any Twitter followers because we weren't allowed to tweet in our industry, I knew I didn't have much of a social media following for that reason. And also, I didn't have a lot of time to devote to a book tour necessarily. So for that reason, I decided to self-publish. And that kind of opened my eyes about how to do that, how to get the word out about the book and how to spread the message on my own without going through the traditional publishing route that a lot of other authors might go through. And I think, but that experience actually is what sort of led me to helping Leon with Fourth Down and Dam.
How did you guys meet? Did you meet when you were in media, or how did you guys meet and decide he wanted you to collaborate with him on the book?
It's actually an interesting story. I've been involved. Another organization that I've been involved with is called World Sports Alumni. It's an association of former professional athletes. And if you go to www.worldsportsalumni.com, you can see more about it. It's funny. I really didn't even mention that as one of my volunteer organizations, mainly because it's not a not-for-profit. It's actually a for-profit entity. It's a for-profit organization for the athletes. Mainly, it sort of grew out of a lot of the athletes had been involved with other alumni organizations of professional sports, and a lot of them were kind of disappointed in that a lot of the other alumni organizations typically are set up as not-for-profits, and a lot of those organizations expect the athletes to show up for events for free because it's a not-for-profit. So it makes sense, but at the same time, the athletes weren't thrilled with that concept. So they liked the idea of kind of creating an organization where they could at least have an opportunity to maybe connect with other like-minded athletes and maybe even think about ways to make money after their careers in sports had come to an end. And in the case of Leon had reached out to World Sports Alumni, and originally they'd actually connected him with a different author. It wasn't me originally, but the other author, for whatever reason, just never really got anything going with the book. No progress was being made. The CEO of World Sports Alumni, Charlie Williams, who was a former professional billiards player known as the Korean Dragon, had actually reached out to me because he was getting nervous that the book was taking so long and nothing was happening with it. He knew I had written the book Incremental Improvements and asked me if I would be interested in working on this project. And it was such an amazing story. I thought, yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely try it. So, the timing was pretty good too, because it was last summer, and with COVID happening, there wasn't a lot going on as the world was sort of locked down anyway, for the most part. So it gave me some free time to kind of work on the book.
So let's talk about your time in covering sports. I mean, you've done Super Bowl weeks. Just kind of give an overview of what you have done, and also tell us about that big story that was picked up by ESPN and Bleacher Report and TMZ and how that came about.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So, as I mentioned earlier, I had worked as a television news producer with the NBC affiliate in West Palm Beach and with America's Health Network in Orlando. And that was back from 1993 to 1997 that I was working in TV. And at that point, I had switched over to my work as a financial advisor, which I've been doing for, well, really since 1997 at this point. I had an opportunity back in early 2019. The Pro Bowl had come to Orlando, and I had an opportunity. A friend of mine was able to offer me a media pass to cover the week of Pro Bowl practices. So I thought, what a great opportunity. I'm a huge sports fan anyway. So I thought, sure, why not? I'll go ahead and cover the Pro Bowl on behalf of the website Vegas Sports Daily, was sort of how I got back into sports reporting. And I was basically just given one task. The gentleman, Mike Dixon, who owns the website, just said, make sure you get some audio with Jared Cook, who was the only Raiders player at the time, the Oakland Raiders, of course, before they moved to Las Vegas. But he said, since this is the only Raiders player, and since the Raiders are going to be moving to Vegas, maybe you can get some sound with Jared Cook. So my first day back in media after decades out of the business, I introduced myself to Jared Cook and let him know that I was representing Vegas Sports Daily. And he said, I'll get to you in 1 minute. I just have to wrap up with the Raiders team media. And as I was listening to him talk to the team media, I heard him telling a story that I thought, oh my gosh, if I can get him to tell me the story on camera, this is going to be amazing. This is going to be great. And so if you think back in early 2019, in January, when the Pro Bowl was happening, the government was going through a shutdown. The government had been shut down. And I heard Jared telling the story. So I was able to get him to, I asked him a couple of other questions, but then I got to the one I really wanted to ask. And I asked him about his experiences in traveling to the Orlando airport. And what he told me is that when he got to the Orlando airport, he said, oh yeah, these, there's a government shutdown, and these TSA agents, they went through my luggage, they stole my shoes, they stole my clothes. But hey, when you're not paying these guys, that's what happens. It's like if you don't feed your dog, they'll go to licking on your bones. It was just a great soundbite. So, of course, that story ended up getting picked up by ESPN and Bleacher Report and TMZ. And so the story just blew up. So I know my buddy who runs Vegas Sports Daily was thrilled because it got him more exposure than he had ever had previously from any particular story. So it's really kind of put him on the map and also kind of relaunched my reporting career, I guess, so to speak. But that was a pretty great experience. And then as a result of that, I was able to kind of go back and cover Pro Bowl again in Orlando, and also was able to get to the Super Bowl in Miami in 2020, and covered the NFL experience in Miami. Also got to work the red carpet for that event. That was pretty neat. Covered Diamond Resorts Invitational Golf Tournament. Also covered week of Super Bowl in Tampa this past year, though it was a little bit different in Tampa because of COVID. All of the media conferences really were all virtual. Nothing was in person. So it was a very different experience than Miami was pre-COVID. And also I've covered, this past season, I was able to cover the Jaguars as well, which was kind of fun. Even though it was a rough season for the Jaguars, my understanding is they should be a little bit better next year, hopefully, with the hiring of Urban Meyer and maybe drafting Trevor Lawrence at the number 1 pick. So we'll see how that goes.
Absolutely. Tell listeners how to connect with you and purchase your book, and give out your social media links so we can keep up with you.
Sure, that would be great. For folks who want to look for me on Instagram, look for Mike_Brodsky. That's Brodsky. You can also find us on Facebook as Mike Brodsky FL would be my personal page. I've also got Incremental Improvements as my author page. Folks can look for the book Fourth Down and Damn by visiting either Leon Searcy's website, www.leonsearcy.com. That's LeonSearcy.com. Or they can go to Amazon, and on Amazon, if you put in either Mike Brodsky or Leon Searcy or Fourth Down and Damn, the book should come up, and you can get either the Kindle or the paperback online. Also, one thing I'll mention too, for anybody that is interested in the book Incremental Improvements, Change Your Life One Small Step at a Time, you can also find that book at Amazon. But I'll give your listeners an extra little secret here. If you go to the website www.incrementalimprovements.com, scroll to the bottom of the website, and you can actually download the book for free, the PDF version. You can get the PDF version for free at www.incrementalimprovements.com.
Absolutely. There you go, listeners. You got any final thoughts for us before we close it out, Mike?
I think I've really enjoyed being on your podcast here, and it's been a great experience for me, Curtis. So thank you very much for the invitation. For folks who want to reach out, again, check out our social media, and we'd love to hear from any of our fans out there.
Absolutely. And I can't wait till that movie comes out, Fourth Down and Damn.
We're looking forward to it as well. Fourth Down and Damn, alignment story. It's a pretty wild story for those, whether you're a sports fan or even if you're not a sports fan, it's a great story. So I would certainly recommend that your listeners check it out.
Yes, I definitely enjoyed it. Mike, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Curtis. I appreciate the invitation.
And listeners, please be sure to follow, rate, and review after listening. For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.